Okay.
We
So
should be live right now.
amazing.
Can you see us?
I can see you.
We are live on Facebook. So we'll just take a minute and allow
I'm
our
gonna
audience to,
share.
to share.
Yeah, I'm sharing.
So you know what? While you're sharing, rather than have me mispronounce your full name, why don't you
Well, it's quite.
mispronounce your name?
Well, it's quite simple. Bart as in Bart Simpson, and then De Witte,
Do we,
and yeah,
how,
De
how,
Witte.
how complicated could that be?
Yeah, if you turn the W and the B around, then it becomes Warte bitte. It's like wait please in
So
German.
it's Bartolomeos Duvita.
Yeah, well, short name Bart. Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm going to call you Bart today, I think, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, and I just shared it, so
So what?
I'm all yours.
Take half a minute because we start our program with our jingle. So you have half a minute now.
I don't hear the jingle, do I?
You will hear the jingle in a second. If you don't, you'd have to tell me.
I
Then it's a major problem.
Get a chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while, all you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell you got Mel? When the show begins, you better hold on real tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down, we're the only show in town. SRO, don't you know you got Mel? Give it up, don't think twice, we're a hurricane on ice. What the hell, give a yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give a smell, you got Mel.
You've got Mel.
Get a chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove.
That's enough. Okay. Now Mel has Bart. So Bart, start at the beginning. You're talking to us from Berlin, right?
I'm based in Berlin now after a bit traveling around in Europe. I'm originally from Antwerp, in Belgium. That's where I grew up. I left Belgium when I was 26 for Switzerland, and I moved 12 years later to Austria, Vienna, and since 4 years I'm in Berlin. So I'm doing this circle. And if you would go further, I would end up, it's like this vortex, and I would probably, the next city would be London, but that was just skipped. Like, I don't think I'm going to London anymore. So I'm staying
No,
here.
I'm sure that we'll see each other in London one day.
Definitely, but I'm staying here. I just became a father recently for the first time, and we settled
How
in
so?
Prenzlauer Berg in Berlin, so which is the area where they are. They tell if you live here for 3 years and you don't become a father, you did something wrong. So it's it's
Or
the
or
area.
or, or you became a mother.
Yeah, or yeah, could be, or you're just not into women as a man. That could also be the case. So there are different options.
Well, okay. So it's already TMI here. Um, so how do you and I know each other?
Well, you know that as well. Yossi Vardis Kindernet, amazing community. So um, I think I first noticed you was when you opened in Venice, playing music, and then you close and you open because in the late night sessions you are there playing piano, and then everybody is sitting around you. So you are very present on these events.
Okay,
And
so let's thank Yossi Vardi
yes,
for introducing us to each other and to so many other people that are on the show.
and the last time I saw you was in Helsinki when we came back from Kinnenord, and that was the last flight I took. I haven't
Yeah.
been flying since then, so I don't know about you, but that was the last flight until the world changed.
Last flight, last flight,
Yeah, yeah, same here.
and last Kinernet. Meanwhile, so lots of wonderful memories from that event,
Yeah,
and we're not going to talk about everything we did there
no, we
because
did crazy things.
not all of it is public.
No, no, it should not be. Some things are on Facebook though, but this yeah, let's not talk about it.
So Bart, what did you study?
Well, the funny thing is like my father was an entrepreneur, and I said like I never want to go into the industry, so I want to work with people. So I studied dentistry,
You studied
um,
what?
dentistry, dentist, d- dentist.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious, and
I thought that I didn't know that about you.
yeah. So there's some secrets here that are to be opened.
Are
I
are
didn't tell you anything.
are you a dentist?
Well, I studied dentistry, but I never practiced. So, and I found out why during my studies. It's the profession with the highest suicide rate. And the two of my commilitones from university already committed suicide. And that's 20 in a span of 20 years. I, there's no reason why, but I think it's the most isolated profession, although you are in contact with people you can't have a conversation. Have you never noticed that your dentist always asks you questions that you can't answer with yes or no, and then you you sit there, yeah, something like that. So, I didn't have any. So okay, this is not gonna be my profession. I was always a nerd. I was always on IT programming, and at that time, computer science was not that something that you studied because you kind of did it. And then I studied another master's in sports science and physiotherapy, which in Belgium was a master degree. And then I moved to Switzerland to
What's
work
that?
for the
I missed that. You did your master's in what?
in sports science and physiotherapy, like rehabilitation.
Sports science?
Yeah, and that sports
Do,
science
do you
and
know do you know how you know how many things we have to talk about now? We just started.
yeah, that was the early days. And then I moved to Switzerland because Switzerland had like this really good reputation for working on sports, and I worked for the rehabilitation center, but as well for the Swiss Olympic Institute. Um, and then there was when the internet started to get a bit like more accessible, and then I started to get access to all these papers, and suddenly I had information access. And then the internet opened up everything, and I was starting to discuss with orthopedic surgeons that we should not treat these patients that way because I found this paper in the internet. So I became this really empowered person that everybody hated, and and then I started to realize that
How can anybody hate you?
well, if you are telling the
You're
truth,
a giant sweetie of a guy.
well, if you tell the truth, that's not always wanted. So I came with all these information layers that were not accessible, and that's where I started to understand that healthcare most probably will change most if you digitize it. And then I started to realize that my hobby, which was always programming, and I was always with connected with computers, and then healthcare itself, that melting these two interests together uh, probably would be the path I would take. And at that time, I had you called it a website. Today, you called it a startup. But at the time, I had a website, and I was translating research papers from English to German language, and I was earning money with it quite a bit. And then I didn't realize, okay, now I didn't study economics and I didn't study all these things. And so I applied for being a consultant for SAP without having any background knowledge. And then 3 months later, I was explaining the CFO of a large academical hospital in Switzerland how he had to do his finance statistics. I don't hear you anymore. Oh, yes. Are you there? Because you spoke
I'm I'm here.
now 3 months later, I was working as a consultant in a hospital, talking to the CFO. I was learning every night what to tell him next day. That's what you do as a consultant. You're just one step ahead. And then I was explaining him how to build these financial statistics. And in SAP, I got this career from consultancy. Did project management, product management. I started to become responsible for corporate strategy in healthcare, and I made my whole career in SAP for 10 years. Before then, moving to IBM and then going further. But
Yeah, so
perhaps you wanna.
you were a corporate big shot.
What is a big shot? Well, I was a corporate, more like wild duck. I didn't always comply with everything what people told me to. So, but I learned, and for me, corporate was an opportunity to learn. I knew that this was not going to be my end station, and I didn't follow the guidelines that they said to me. You need to change the industry, you need to have at least 3 industries to make a career, you can't stick only to healthcare. And I said no, because if I'm 45 and I know 3 industries, I'm going to become an old manager. But if I'm 45 and I stuck to healthcare, I become a kind of a subject matter expert. And then the one you're going to keep is the subject matter expert, not the old manager. So I started to focus really to get in-depth knowledge into healthcare and digitalization.
And then you were a corporate rebel for 10 years,
Tw-
and now you're
19 was 10 years at SAP, 9 years at IBM. So that's quite a long time. Yeah.
just a rebel.
Was just a rebel, yeah, but a rebel with a cause, not without a cause. Like,
Ah, any rebel has to have a cause. So
there's some.
you have a very and it's funny. The last time we talked about this, this is phlegm, not corona. The last time we talked about this was at the airport in Frankfurt, I think, on the way back from Finland.
I think it was in Helsinki still, but yeah, it could
Could
be in
be,
Frankfurt. Yeah,
could
yeah.
be Helsinki, one of those. And you want to change the world. Very small aspiration you have. So
Yeah.
now's the time to tell everybody how you are changing the world and
Well,
what we can do to help you.
yeah, changing the world is a bit like everybody wants to change the world, and you can do it in small steps or in big steps. But I left IBM. I'm quite connected to for me, the most transformational technology in health is machine learning, or general term artificial intelligence, because healthcare is about applying knowledge at the right time, at the right place for that particular patient. So when you understand what machine learning is it's about getting access to services that have some input and then an output, which tells you which decision you need to take or could take. Um, and we are in a very early stage still, but I've seen an evolution that I disagreed with. So the evolution today is that we are creating these same business models as we have seen in the classic internet industry, where data is going to get monetized and knowledge gets privatized. And I completely understand that if you are Tesla and you want to privatize your algorithms that allow you to be more competitive to have a self-driving car. But I disagree with that view that suddenly healthcare knowledge, which always has been publicly available in books where you as a student can read, suddenly becomes siloed behind the paywalls of a private organization. And I see then suddenly that we are entering this new age of healthcare or digital health, where we're starting to yeah, privatize something that always was a public good. And the origins from healthcare, if you go 2,000 years back to a few thousand years back to Hippocrates, who laid the ethical foundation for modern medicine, every doctor who took his oath needed to comply with a simple rule. He was committed to share his knowledge for free. Knowledge sharing for free and having open access to knowledge is the fundament of our evolution and our progress in medicine. And now we are going to reverse that into something that we call yeah, it gives you a competitive advantage, or it helps you to create a unicorn company. And I said, like, this can't be how we apply AI in healthcare. So and then I started to understand that Europe, we would be very naive to think that we have a chance versus China to win this battle of creating these giants that will come out there, because China just has way better ways to scale. They have better access to data. They don't have data protection, and they don't have that much ethics when it comes to getting access to data. And the US has more capital, and it's like, what is going to be the European story? And I thought quite a long time about it, and I started to understand that we need something similar as to open source for software was, to that what we do in medicine for AI. And I've then quitted my career, and then I said, like, I'm going to open source AI. And that was at Kindernet in Venice. Then people asked me, what do you do? And I stood up and I said, I'm going to open source medical AI. I had no clue at the time how I was going to do that. But I said, like, I'm going to do this. And I made my commitment. And then a few months later, I left my job. Everybody called me crazy. And I started to learn a lot first. I wanted to understand better what the real problem is that I'm solving, and how you can really solve that, because AI is not similar as with software where you have code. You have a with AI you have a content layer, which is the data, and then you have the logical layer, which is the algorithm itself. So you can't repeat, and then you have the learning phase where by the application of the AI model, you continuously learn, which made Google search be the dominant search engine in Europe with 92% market share because they have that network effect. And so there's a lot of aspects that make it really complex. So how do you create something that is a common good? And it took me now.
So
Yeah,
let me just stop you now for a second.
yeah.
You're asking medical companies to share their knowledge. Why should they do that?
I'm not asking medical companies. What I understood is that the data that is generated and extracted out of our bodies is not belonging to the industry; it belongs to society. So you can look at it having two value systems. You can create not the knowledge and create value, societal value, or you can create economical value out of the data.
That requires legislation.
Well, no, not particularly. So the solution that I created now is we're gonna start our first campaign in the 1st of October. The campaign is called Victoria 1.0 because I created new narratives and new metaphors for data. So I don't call data an commodity or oil or gold or whatever. So like data is human life in healthcare. Data is people. So and if you look at what is missing, there's what we don't have, although everybody talks about data in healthcare, there are no global data sets that represent the whole population that are useful, that are free of bias, that are open, accessible for any disease. Like in 2009, there was a researcher at IEEE who published ImageNet, and there was 50 million labeled images, and that really created this huge traction in research because suddenly people had access to labeled data. Well, in healthcare, there is no labeled data. So our focus is we have set up an NGO structure, a nonprofit, that through donations, we create these open data sets. So, and the funny part is I have traction from the industry. The industry, especially in Europe, understands that we need to collaborate and we need to share with industry with each other, which is similar as with open source. Like 60% of the IBM cloud services and the Google cloud service and the Amazon clouds are open source. Like 60% of what is in their stack is not making them competitive. So they started to understand that we need a common layer, and that common layer can be a network of AI agents that share their knowledge, and you start with data. So we start with our first global data set on breast cancer. That's why we chose the 1st of October, because it's the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it's called Victoria 1.0. And I'm I'm hacking a bit the classic foundations because we learned through the research and who we are addressing. So we are addressing the people, because if you want to create AI which is of the people, by the people, and for the people, you need to address the people. So we got to use a lot of social media campaigns, and we start up with the German Fashion Vogue. So I have a I have a 2-page interview in the Fashion Vogue, and then we have Victoria, which is a real cancer patient. She's 32 years old, and we're starting this campaign with creating a very different image of cancer. So it's closer to young people, it's closer to social media, and we're going to demand for donations. I have med tech companies that will support it, that will be visible from the 1st of October. And they will support this thing to get access to the data. The second part is that I created a new license model. Because if I create open data, then okay, then this monopolist can come and say, thank you, Bart, for the effort. I take the data and I augment my already privatized AI models with your open data.
Yeah, that was my
So I
next
don't,
question.
yeah, so I, yeah, and so you don't solve the problem. So we created a new license model, which is called the Hippo AI license model, Hippo from Hippocrates, but also every open source movement needs an animal. Linux is a penguin. A hippo is a nice animal. It's quite dangerous, but um, and the Hippo AI license model tells you following. So it allows you to use these data sets for extracting AI models out of the data, but you are obliged to register these AI models into a public register where you get each model gets an ID. You can commercialize these AI models, you can earn money with it, but the learnings itself needs to be brought back through federated learning systems in the community itself. So what you actually create is a network of intelligent agents. So each there is for breast cancer, there can be 20 global AI models, and then people will choose the best one, and then they start to apply this in their systems. And everybody who applies it trains it with their local data, and then the learning effects get better, get shared, not the data, but the learning effects. And by license, that learning is open knowledge and is not owned by anybody. It's owned by the crowd, so it's owned by the people.
So right now, Bart, who has the content? A government, a hospitals, a clinics, or industry? Who has the content that you need when you open in October?
Well, the content is different. Like there are a lot of AI papers already being done on breast cancer, and each of these researchers already has created data sets for their research paper. They have gathered already the consent for doing that research. And what we want to create is global data sets. So we approach these researchers and say like, hey, you have that data set for that paper. We have this new
But
license
these
model.
are university researchers or
Yeah,
industry?
these are at academical institutes. So I'm already working, for example, at the next data set, which is on colon cancer, but that's going to be finished in 2021, where 28 clinical institutes are working on the largest label data set. And they say like, we're going to give it to you, Bart, because we like your license model, because we support open knowledge. And as soon as I published that license model or gave access to them to that license model, people are giving me the data because they know what the effect is of doing so. Most of the researchers and the physicians, they dislike the privatization and the tech industry entering their domain. There is what I learned is that this is a bit like Game of Thrones. Like you have kingdoms, and and these kingdoms are sometimes separated into sub kingdoms, but physicians want to stay in power in healthcare. They want to be under control. And if there is one large tech organization who owns all the knowledge, they don't own the control anymore. They lose control. So if you democratize AI and you make it public, physicians stay in power because it's they get still access to the tools. So I started to understand that I have all the physicians behind this movement. In December, I did one of my last keynotes. I got a standing ovation of 500 physicians standing up, clapping in their hands for 5 minutes because they love the ID. And it took me a year to understand how to create a narrative, how to do this. But I'm going to be funded by physicians, by private institutions. I don't want any money from the government, and there are particular reasons for that. So there's the Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. I talked to Ulrike from Pilar, who is the founder of Doctors Without Borders Germany, and I talked to other founders of the original organization, and they all said like, never accept money from governments because this is such a political tool that they will steer you in any direction. So, and they didn't do that either because suddenly there is a boycott against Russia or Israel or whatever, and then I can't collaborate because I accepted money, and I don't. I want to stay independent. So I always say like people are more connected with each other than we are connected to our own government. So if we create something as powerful as AI, we should own it as people and not put it in the government hands or in the hands of single industries.
So have you already raised the significant money that's going to let you launch this on October 1st?
Well, we raised, but it's not in terms of that we have billions or double-digit millions on there. What I learned is at the beginning I made mistakes. So in the very early stage I went to Dietmar Hopp, the founder of SAP, and I went to these billionaires, and they said, "Yes, I love the idea." And then, so how are we going to do this? And I said, "I don't know yet." So I was way too early knocking on those doors. And what I learned is that I first need much more proof points, and that's what we are doing. But what I learned as well is that there is a strong willingness of some individuals once this gets traction to support this because it makes a lot of sense to do this. And people who think, as you to come to your question before, so how is the industry going to earn money? I don't think they understand how you can earn money because this thing here, this is the iPhone. The first iPhone that came to market, Apple didn't have any IP that they owned. They bought IP. And then that's why the Android looked very similar because they could not protect any of the design. And still though, Apple sells these devices 10 years, more than 10 years later, still highly profitable. Why? Because they create a great experience. So if in healthcare we can stop competing on IP of knowledge that saves human lives, but create great services that create great experiences, and we start leveraging ourselves to an experience economy level and really start putting more attention on the care level, on what we are actually doing in healthcare, I think we create a better healthcare system. The approach today is I own that knowledge. It's protected for 14 years, and I can keep it for me. That I don't think that is really in a digital realm the model we should go for.
Okay, and but also some of the bodies are not going to be comfortable sharing some of the data. Sometimes, you do large scale experiments wrong.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why we start with breast cancer data because it's anonymizable. It is not as particular as genomics. So I have no answer yet how we will solve this on a multi-omics because you don't only have genomics, you have proteomics, you have metabolomics, there's different data sets that are on a biological level that also need to be opened. That's going to be more difficult. But we start there where we can create value for society. So if there is a lot of problems still with mammographic screening and false positive, negative, so if you create really good open AI models in underserved areas, we have an impact. And I need to focus on creating very short-term impact, not something like precision medicine, which is only going to lift up in 10 years or something.
So I don't know whether I told you this, but what bothers me is the science publishing industry.
Open access is the same story. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're a scientist and you want your research to be open access, you have to pay a lot of money to the publishing houses, thousands of dollars, to unlock your article so that everybody can read it. I wrote an article in Scientific American in 2002,
Mhm.
and if I want to share that article with you, I have to buy it for $28. My
Mhm.
article from almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, that that's very similar. Like there is public funding for public research, and then suddenly there is a paywall that allows you to not get access to actually what should have been public knowledge. And and
And
that's
those medical textbooks you talked about 20
Mhm.
minutes ago, and I bit my tongue because they cost $300.
Yeah, yeah, and but we have. sh- shown with Wikipedia and other models that we can liberate knowledge. Knowledge should not oppress us. Knowledge should liberate us. We have been doing this since 300 years, since the Enlightenment started in Europe, and that's what made us flourish. And we are kind of returning back to the age where there before Gutenberg, there was the Vatican in Europe that said like if you were sick, then you were punished by God, and you could buy a letter of indulgence, um, or you could go to Santiago de Compostela to go on your knees and pray for your family. There was one single organization. They spoke this secret language, Latin. The crowd didn't understood it. And they told you, because you were sick, that you needed to do this. So it's kind of a pre-Google area, one single organization owning all the knowledge and telling a story, and then profiting from it. And I think we should learn from the past that if people create power asymmetries and knowledge asymmetries in society, then this will always lead to abuse, always. And there is no part in history where that didn't happen. So I think our society flourishes most when we create open access. And um, so on the publisher side, it is the same, but you can even go to a case in the US where the PrEP medication for HIV patients, the whole research was done by public funding. And then there was Gilead Pharma who managed to create IP for the US market. And so PrEP in the US is being sold for $2,000 a month, where in Australia it costs $8 a month. So and the creation was public. So I think we have an issue there in healthcare, and I think healthcare, my value system tells that everybody should get access to the same kind of healthcare. It should not be based on class or whatever, and there should not be health inequalities. Because if you have a society that has health inequalities, that society becomes mechanical and unstable. And I think you see kind of the fruits now in the US of such a unequal system.
I'm happy to report that one of the good things about Israel is that we have a very relatively egalitarian and very good medical system for all,
Yeah.
which has a government umbrella. So at least in that area, we're very lucky. So Bart, here's the thing. I didn't know that you were a dentist. You know what I did for 30 years before you met me?
I know you created something for your mouth.
Yeah, I was an expert in schlechte Adem, in Mundgeruch,
Yeah.
and I spent my whole life smelling people. So I think that what you're doing is marvelous, and I really congratulate you for this initiative, to the extent that I'm going to be really happy when this takes off and succeeds, because we have a website with 140,000 free books, and books that I used to sell for $100 are now free on my website. So I really think that most things in the content field, especially in health, should be free and accessible.
There's another thing another angle. So I started to learn to play the different narratives in our future thinking. So there was this huge discussion on universal basic income as a solution for automation and loss of jobs. And I oppose a bit that approach, because it's based on an old paradigm that doesn't reflect what the possibilities are today. And I said, like, instead of creating universal basic income, we should create more digital commons. Like the air that we breathe, the water that is there, these are common goods. So we need to create digital common goods. Wikipedia is a digital common good, and we need to
Well, with
create,
Wikipedia, because of Yossi Vardi, I also got to know my hero
yeah,
in the internet,
Jimmy,
Jimmy Wales,
yeah.
and it's great to actually know your hero. And he's my mentor in all of this. Um, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the digital commons layer, like I've been discussing this recently, and people get really emotional when you discuss that. It's like, what do you want more? Like, do you want, if there's automation, do you want a society where people can get free access to digital commons that help you to diagnose yourself or diagnose or whatever, where everything becomes like really accessible? Or do you want us to have $1,500 in a month with your universal basic income, and then you need a gene therapy of 2.2 million US dollars? That is not going to give you any head start. That doesn't really help you. So there is this, you are familiar with Moore's law. Moore's law is the law that gave us accessible technology, because the processing capacity doubled every 12 to 24 months. The price went down. But in healthcare, you talk about Aron's law. And it's like Moore's law spelled the other way around. And there was a paper that was published um, a few years ago about Aron's law, and they analyzed the medication pricing, and it just went up exponentially.
Yeah.
But the performance didn't grow as double. There was no reason why that should grow exponentially. And I think we need to think how we can break down that Aron's law and make it Moore's law. And I think that's why you can learn from open source movements or digital commons like Jimmy Wells is doing. And that's what I try to do now on the AI side in medicine.
So I'm going to salute you, and you are one of a kind for this, and I wish you lots of luck. And now just let's go light for a few minutes. Hobbies, pastimes. Uh, your first baby?
Yes, I'm an early adopter on technology, but a late adopter on family planning. Yeah, first baby Louis. We got him 6 weeks ago.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. And he's a Berliner, so he's a real Berliner, and I have this really strange connection to Berlin. To tell you a bit of a story, when the Berlin Wall fell, I was in Belgium, and I was just at university. And then we took 4 cars and we drove to Berlin. And then before the East German border, a friend who was sitting in my car told me, Bart, I don't have my passport with me. What do we do? And the border is open. So no, the border is not open. That is just a hole in the wall in Berlin. And so we decided to hide him in the trunk of my car. And I had like this little Peugeot 205, and he was 2 meters 10 tall. And then we managed like two of our cars. We had 4 cars. We had like completely opened and checked, and mine was a second, and they didn't check it, luckily. And after 1 hour, we could leave. And then we drove into Berlin. And I'm most probably the last idiot that smuggled somebody into East Germany, because after a month later, everything was gone.
Yeah.
So
Why was I trying so hard to get?
why do we want to go into there? And now I live here. So, and I remember that night. It was like the second day of where the Berlin Wall fell, and we slept in front of the Reichstag and everything. So I have this really special connection to Berlin, and now I live like where I probably was celebrating in the same area. But yeah, Berlin is all about falling and breaking down walls and being
Yeah.
open.
So many people who live in Europe have these either real walls, like in Berlin, where you have the middle-aged population who remembers exactly where the wall was and how life was, and the kids who have no clue.
Yeah, it's always the same. And
There's many places in Europe that were under the Eastern influence, that have virtual walls in the hearts of people, where you see that everything is free, and yet the elderly people, let's say people my age, some of their behavior is still under the communist fear.
Mhm.
And if you look at what's happening in Belarus, that fear is still very, very present.
I met a mayor of a small East German village which was directly at the border of the wall, and that was like a few months ago. No, I was already the time flight. This year is a really strange year. It was 8 months ago,
It's a
and
strange year for everybody.
so I don't have any relation to time anymore that much. It's like it's only been a few months, but it's we already are end of August. But he was telling the story about his village was directly at the border, East Germany. And then suddenly, when everything happened, they like the larger houses they were taken by the government and cut into two pieces because you could not own a large house. And then they had a map, a street map of the village, and they deliberately changed the roads from that street map so you could not find the wall. And then when you were living there, people would knock on your door at 2 o'clock with that map and then asking you, where do you find the wall? But mostly these people were Stasi trying to tell you that they were escaping. But if you would tell them where the wall was, you would have been captured because it was a Stasi knocking at your door. It was not people who wanted to escape. So it was
Ah,
this really hideous, perverse system where nobody can trust anyone. And that guy, when he was telling that story 30 years ago, which is already 30 years ago, he was crying. The fear was still there. And I don't understand why people suddenly don't realize when we discuss extreme ideologies that this ideology is also not the right ideology to go for. But although there's a few voices that say like, no, no, we have to go back to a more leftist communistic system, and it's like, well, then talk to those people. The young people don't understand it anymore, as you said. The fear is
so,
there and it's real.
so I know there's a lot of Jewish people and Israelis living in Berlin, but I have to tell you that when I go to Berlin, I get the hibby-jibbies, because my memory goes way, way back to the Second World War.
Mm.
And well, we talk about this another time. Anyway, Bart, just to end our wonderful conversation, do you like Beatles music?
I like the Beatles music, yes.
So I ask everybody on the show, what's your favorite Beatles song?
There is no favorite for me in the Beatles because the one you always sing is the Yellow Submarine, but that's not my favorite. But what would be my favorite? Um, I have no clue what my. I don't have a favorite Beatles song, I must say.
Well, then it's the Yellow Submarine.
Well, then, yeah, but it's like so obvious.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
You're the
Okay.
first person on the show to pick that song. And now, if you would like just to sing a few bars for our audience.
You know that what I can't is really singing. So uh, we all live in the yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine.
Okay,
We
so
are okay. So
we've now shown our audience that you have a really soft human side, but you're also on this mission to to free the data that will help human beings around the world be healthier and live a better life. And from here in Israel, I congratulate you and I wish you tons of success with this wonderful initiative.
yeah, October. I will send you. So I'll share the link from our campaign that starts on the 1st of October with
Well,
Victoria
absolutely.
1.0.
Absolutely. And if I don't find a job and I continue to do this stuff for free, I'll have you back on the show in a couple of months.
Or you just open the Hippo Foundation in Israel. So and we are planning, like if you look at Doctors Without Borders, they have 54 decentralized organizations, all kind of acting as a network. We're going to do similar. We're gonna set up in quite a lot of countries local organizations. So let's talk.
Okay. Or I will write you a children's book about hippos.
That's also a good idea. You know that what I learned is that hippos are the animal that protects their children most. That's why they are so aggressive. So they are future generation thinkers.
Aha, okay.
Yeah, they protect their children.
That's something I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
So Bart, be well and
Thank
continue
you
to
so much.
thank you. Continue to make the world a better place.
Thank you. Love you too. Bye bye. Well, see
Bye.
you.